Welcome to the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on Rotogrinders, brought to you by Jock Market. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. Buy and sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50 using the promo code GRINDERS. And get this, if you don't turn a profit this week, Jock Market is running back their first market guarantee to cover your losses this week. So download Jock Market in the app or Play stores, or check out jockmarket.com. That's JOCKMKT.com, and use the code GRINDERS for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, Blender HD, if you want to follow me there on Twitter. Join with the man behind the dials, the man behind the numbers, the man behind the hamster wheels that run Advanced Sports Analytics. It's Stewart Gibson for another week of stacks, correlation, leverage. This week is not that many good games.
Yeah.
We only have two games that have a 50+ total, and that's just at 50, the lowest at 41. 11-game slate. A lot of the top teams are not on the slate, and then we have teams that are on the slate that aren't necessarily playing their best or their starting quarterback even. On weeks like this, Stewart, I mean, I think I asked the same. It was very similar last week where we only had like one game that was like that far above anyone else's. Do your tools show that like it's much more spread out on what teams would eventually be like the top stack percentage on the slate?
Yeah, so we're actually getting fairly condensed this week, as where last week it was quite spread out. I don't think there were just the top quarterbacks and the top skill players were not on the slate. So there was, I think, a little more dispersion in how we were projecting ownership and also how players were projecting. With this week, we do have a couple teams that have these premier quarterback and skill player combinations that, even though it's a flat week from a total standpoint, our models seem to be inclined to heavily index some of these top players, top kind of stacks from a pure ceiling standpoint.
And that's
so
a lot due, Stewart, to the fact that, we do have like two teams that are more than a touchdown favorite, one team that is a touchdown favorite. So is it more leading to, I mean, we'll get to it, but like the Bills have a 31.5 implied total. The Cowboys have 29.75 currently. So even though like the Bills are the biggest favorite on the slate, they're a 14.5 point favorite over the Jaguars. Are we talking about like it's more condensed towards the high implied total teams and not necessarily the highest over under games?
Specifically with the Bills, like I'm actually referring to different teams. But sorry, Buffalo is showing up pretty solid. I mean, there's really, I think there's no need to be coy about it. I mean, there's really the three like premier teams from just a combination of skilled players and quarterback, Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City. So they actually are showing up as three of the top four teams. So yeah, I mean, seeing pretty condensed kind of preference for those squads. The ownership is gonna lean that way, but and which is so much like injuries and COVID and whatever with some of these premier quarterbacks, not even premier quarterbacks, but the starting quarterbacks of teams. Yeah, I mean, I think there's just like a pretty, at least our numbers are seeing a pretty distinct cliff once you get past like those top three teams And there's a fourth team in the mix there that isn't kind of one of the premier teams that's showing up for us. But yeah, I think in these weeks where there's not a team that's standing out from a clear like Vegas standpoint, sometimes at least our numbers are trusting the teams with the supreme talent. And I mean, those teams are also correlating with some of the higher totals on the slate. We just don't have the 53 plus total games like we had in previous weeks. So yeah, I think in general, like my stance is going to be to just try to load up on some of these premier stacks and try to get contrarian elsewhere.
Okay, with the fact that we really don't have like a multitude of high total games to go over, I think let's do a little bit more of a free format for this week's show with the pluses and the minuses. I would think based on ownership and probably based on your tools, let's talk about Minnesota at Baltimore. That's a 50 total. The Ravens are a 6-point favorite, 27.5 implied total, 22 for the Vikings. Based on projections that I'm seeing, we have some ownership on Cook, some on Andrews, not much, single digit in some of the skilled players. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be one of the highest owned quarterbacks, which is obviously going to drag guys like Brown and Andrews or even Bateman, up in ownership because, people will want to stack. But I have, based on my numbers, from a projection standpoint versus ownership, as a minus game. Do you see it differently? Are you more likely to play a Lamar, Brown, Andrews, Cook type of team, or Jefferson or Thielen? We have Sammy Watkins as questionable. So like that may cut into, maybe Bateman's snaps. It may cut into some, target share for Brown and Edwards. And do you believe that, Baltimore is passing above expectation in comparison to the past? But do you think that some of the ceiling in this game is kind of wasted away on if the Ravens run the ball a lot?
Yeah, so I have a kind of a single plus, small plus on the game. I think you're correct. Yeah, Jackson could be the most owned quarterback. I just think given the projectable value for him and, Andrews to me really stands out as like the he fills that tight end kind of position, has, I think, a really strong projection this week. It is a spot where I think I'm willing to, I'm not going to say go massively overweight on, but certainly I'm not going to be avoiding the game. We currently are not considering Watkins projection. So I do think you are right in that some of that stuff could change. Like if Watkins gets ruled in, you could see some, dispersion of targets between like Bateman, Andrews, Marquise Brown. So I do think that is something to keep an eye on.
Most of the value in this game from the projections that I'm looking at, which is not just like the blitz and not just gridiron IQ, just from around the industry, is that at quarterback, like it seems like this game stack type of situation, if you do a 3+1, a skinny 2+1, or just, a single or whatever, a lot of the value of this stack leans heavily towards Lamar Jackson and not necessarily on the pieces that connect to him. I'm not a big fan of running out naked quarterbacks, but it seems like based on the numbers that I'm looking at, that I'm more like, I wouldn't be opposed to having Lamar naked with Dalvin Cook run back, like that be it. Cause like every other player in this game from a salary adjusted plus minus value is negative. So it's like, am I going to make up enough points from Lamar Jackson himself for the kind of lower ceiling probabilities from the other players? So that's the issue I have with this game, is that the value is on Lamar and he's going to be the highest owned quarterback. So it's like, I don't get the best of both worlds. It's like, if I play
Yeah.
him, like I'm going to be losing projection with the secondary pieces. But if I play him, I also don't get any ownership discount with it. So like that's really the base of my minus towards this game is more that like it's hard to stack this game and maintain good projections and lower ownership.
But like, I mean, I'm just looking at y'all's projections. I'm seeing what 11% on Andrews. I think I saw 8% or something on Brown, 7% on Bateman. I mean, it does seem like that line of thinking of like, I'm with you. I mean, like doing naked QB either. Don't you think going naked Lamar will be a route that an elevated proportion of lineups go this week? I mean, would the somewhat
in cash games, sure, but I don't think in GPPs they're going to. I mean, people are going to stack. I mean, people are more likely to actually double stack now than they used to in the past. I just think that I get a better projection value from stacking other games, being that Lamar is going to be the highest owned quarterback. So it's like I'm not getting a benefit anywhere because I also think that some of these ownership numbers are going to come up. I think Marquise Brown will end up still being 10%. I think Andrews will be 15%. I think if Watkins is out, Bateman will be 10%. I think some of this ownership is like yeah, they may not show up as one-offs, but with Lamar being 15% owned or so, like the ownership of these other pieces almost have to come up.
Yeah.
The ownership just to be clear, just for people, it's like, well, wouldn't that be affected in the ownership? A lot of ownership is done like mathematically without like, basing it on a rational market. And, I do make adjustments based on an irrational market. So like, yeah, mathematically, maybe Marquise Brown should only be 7 or 8% owned. I just think that people plug in, like people wouldn't play Lamar naked. They would actually want to play more of at least one piece with him, and it'll push these guys up too far.
Got it. Okay. So you're suggesting maybe that those ownership numbers that are in right now for the Baltimore guys are deflated a decent bit relative to what you're expecting to see come Sunday.
Right. Only because I don't expect people to run like naked Lamar. People are obviously more likely out of more other quarterbacks to run naked Lamar. Just that, especially this season, if it was like last season, we may see more naked Lamar lineups. But with them passing a little bit more than they have in the past, like just recently, like I think people have no problem just plugging in Brown and Andrews or something like that. And I think compared to that'll increase their ownership. And then I think they're inefficient. Then I think they're overowned at that point.
Okay. So if it's a game that you kind of have a minus on, I mean, there still is a fairly strong, I mean, the highest game total is your intuition to try to just fade the game at large, or are there contrarian routes that you would consider taking really from either side as leverage against what, I think we both agree will be very popular Lamar Jackson?
I think you could take these guys as one-offs. I think Andrews as a one-off at tight end, because if he could win the tight end position, I think the decision I make on Andrews really comes down to whether or not Waller is going to be active for the Raiders, because I prefer Waller over Andrews. But I have no problem playing Dalvin Cook as a one-off, like just as himself. I don't have no problem with Justin Jefferson as a one. It almost feels like the Vikings one-offs are more advantageous to have than the, and even the 1v1, the 1-to-1s, like not playing Lamar and playing like Dalvin Cook plus Marquise Brown, right? And then not having Lamar in the lineup, and you're playing a lower owned quarterback with a different stack. Like I could see that getting into some lineups, but really from a projectable value, like I think this game is going to be over-owned. So I'm more likely to have less of them, less of the individual pieces. But the Viking side, I think, is the under-owned side, and the Baltimore side is the over-owned one.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean, like naturally, running backs make for good fades against passing stacks, but who knows what Baltimore is going to do at running back. I guess, to me, it feels like if Brown or Andrews goes off, Lamar is like one of these guys that any value he can get out of passing the ball is really just, it's just icing on the cake. Like, I guess my concern would be that if Brown or Andrews goes off in a, tournament winning way, wouldn't it just be highly likely that Lamar is a necessary piece of those lineups that succeed, as
not if he doesn't get rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they
Which
could run the ball in 2 or 3 times without Lamar, and Marquise Brown still has a 6 for 170 and 1 touchdown game, and Lamar's not the highest, QB1 on the slate. I mean, it's still possible. It's more in relation to the ownership. It has nothing to me. Like, if this game was lower owned, then yeah, I'd have no problem with it. Just that when everything is kind of more spread out total wise, like I'm more inclined to get off of chalkier players unless it's worth. I find another team. I think the Ravens are going to be just as owned as another team. And I'd much rather, like just to put it into perspective, I think Josh Allen's a better play on the slate than Lamar Jackson. And they have the highest implied team total against Jacksonville. And I think from a projectable value, let me go to the Buffalo Jacksonville game. Like, I'm seeing, obviously Josh Allen's probably the second highest owned quarterback. He's 8,200. He's expensive though. I think this is a week where a lot of people are going to try to go cheap at quarterback because we have some options cheap at quarterback. And I think that'll limit Allen's ownership at 8,200. And then taking a look at Diggs, 9.5%, Beasley, 11.5%, Emmanuel Sanders, 1.9%. Zach Moss, obviously, is a running back. I mean, the most owned player in this game is going to be Dan Arnold, still at 3,400. Like, why don't I just play an Allen double stack and at possibly lower ownership or at least similar ownership? And I think the path of the Allen double stack getting there is much clearer. Like, Lamar could be vultured in so many different ways, but like, if Allen puts up 340, 350 and 4, like, what else do I need? Just grab me 2 pass catchers and run me down. And you could even use Dan Arnold as the run back and just, if you're going to punt the tight end anyway, well, there you go. Well, you could just punt with him and play a 3+1 like that. I think this stack is going to be like probably the second highest owned on the slate, but I actually think it's under owned in comparison to the Lamar stack.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, as discussed at the top of the show, I mean, these are one of the 3 kind of power teams that, I have kind of plus grades on. Man, are we at all nervous about? We touched on this in the Substack article last week. Like, I mean, Diggs's role and just efficiency as well has it just hasn't quite been what it was last year. He actually had last week had a season low, 16% target share. I mean, do you see Diggs as a necessary piece to stack with Allen?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's not necessary. I just think in this game, I'm talking about the difference between a rational market and an irrational market. I think people that there's going to be some ownership discount on the fact that they're 2 touchdown favorite, and people have this thing of like, well, if they're going to blow them out, I don't want to play them. Not realizing that if they blow them out, they probably scored 6 touchdowns in the process, and I want those points. And secondly, just for the fact that Diggs has not produced as expected this year, will lower his ownership at 7,700. More people are going to play Tyreek Hill in that range. And, just if I told you that Diggs went out and had 10 for 150 and 2 touchdowns, is anyone, are you surprised if this was week 1 of the season and that happened? Like, people would look at this and go, why aren't I playing Allen plus Diggs plus Beasley, to double stack? I mean, I think that type of that irrationality will keep the ownership down in comparison to other stacks on the slate. And with them having the highest team total, like, just keep it simple, stupid, and just like Josh Allen double stacks. Like, you're never wrong playing them. Sometimes they don't work out, but like, it's not like I have to make a case. Like, what's the case do I have to make if the Bills put up 42 points with Josh Allen throwing for 5 touchdowns? Like, Like that's well within the range of outcomes in comparison to other teams on the slate. It's very similar to saying with Mahomes, right? Like, why bother trying to play like 5K quarterbacks where it's like, I'm just going to pay 8,200. I'm going to play the Bills double stack and come run me down with your other team. So like, that's my thinking behind it. And I think people are going to galaxy brain themselves off of this and not just take the highest ceiling team on the slate.
Yeah. No, I like it. I mean, I like the approach of going expensive at quarterback this week. Yeah, Allen makes a ton of sense. We have Beasley popping as kind of the just best with consideration for projection, cost, ownership, et cetera, popping as a strong option. Diggs looks fine. Yeah, I mean, it's just he has yet to have like one of these big, not even talking about like looking at just looking at fantasy points scored, but really just like target, he has yet to get like huge target share games. I think he's over 25% only twice on the year so far. He topped that number. I'm counting five times in the first 8 weeks last year. If it were kind of the same roster, same makeup, wouldn't think much of it. But the insertion of Sanders, I know Dawson Knox has played a more impactful role, and he's out of the mix now. So maybe you can project a little extra for Diggs, but it is concerning. But yeah, I mean, known kind of one of the highest ceiling guys at the position, and the Allen Diggs stack, even though it has yet to kind of pay off in a huge way so far this year, probably has as much of a ceiling as any on the slate. So
do you have another game?
Yeah, so I really like the Kansas City stack. I think.
Did you consult with Joe Rogan before coming to that conclusion?
No.
I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw that what's been going on with Aaron Rodgers, but like this game would have been, Stewart, the most popular game on the slate if Rodgers played. But this total opened at 55.5, and now it's down to 48. The Kansas City Chiefs are now a 7-point favorite at home, 27.75 implied total for the Chiefs. But the Packers still have 26.75 implied total because the Chiefs defense isn't all that good. Are you looking at this game from a Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey type of perspective? Are you looking more like $4,400 for Jordan Love is insanely cheap for a quarterback on DraftKings? Are you more likely to do Love plus Adams plus Hill or Kelsey as the run back? Or are you just looking at it's Mahomes? He could easily put up 40 points, and just like the Chiefs are going to be maybe as low from a Mahomes perspective. I think he's going to be lower owned you would think on this slate, it's like we don't have that many high total games. Mahomes is not going to be one of the top 3 owned quarterbacks. So is that your thinking of like?
Yeah. Like, I mean,
the Chiefs are just going to one of these days, the Chiefs are going to put up 50 points in a game, and you want to be on board when that happens before the field reacts to it.
Yeah, exactly. And like there are weeks where we get kind of Mahomes as one of the top 3 owned quarterbacks, and at least as it's shaping out now, just seems to me like he's going to go a bit under owned. Of course, Kelsey and Hill are going to be popular. I think the way to, rather than just be like the field and kind of take them as well priced one-offs, like get Mahomes, get that correlation. I think you could stack up both Mahomes, Hill and Kelsey. You could go with Hardman on the Green Bay side. Of course, Adams is a bring back. Of course, you're getting quite expensive. Like I also wouldn't be opposed to like bringing back Aaron Jones. I do think with Kansas City's weak run defense, there's opportunities for him to hit home runs. He's been relevant in the passing game, kind of one of the more prominent pass catching backs. Like I really like kind of the Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill, Aaron Jones, I guess bucket of players. And the ownership is going to be tough on those Kansas City skill players, but I don't see, at least as of now, Mahomes being super high owned. And yeah, I mean, we know that Vegas is not super high on, the game total, but it does feel kind of like one of these weeks, Kansas City is going to explode in a big way. And I don't know. Yeah, would like to be on that side when that takes place.
I have a plus on Cowboys versus Broncos. Okay. The Cowboys are a 10-point favorite, 49 total. Cowboys 29.75 implied total. The Broncos 19.75 implied total. From a projection and ownership standpoint, Amari Cooper may be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate. He's 5,700. Zeke Elliott, we have a fairly weak running back pool this week. We have him at like over 20% ownership. The thing is that on the opposite side, on the Broncos, like all single digits. So like, how can I play Amari Cooper in a way that is different? Well, why not play him in the stack? I mean, Prescott coming off of an injury. We don't have him as very highly owned at quarterback. Bridgewater, definitely not so. The Broncos throw the ball more than people think they throw the ball. Obviously, this game could be, they try to hide Dak coming back from an injury and run the ball more. But who says that? Why can't I play Dak plus Cooper plus Cortland Sutton or something, or Jerry Jeudy, or even play Albert O, as a cheap tight end or something? Why can't I play the Bridgewater side and play Bridgewater plus 2 and run it back with Cooper or Elliott? So even though, Cooper and Elliott may be inflated ownership, but like when they have big games, the other side may have big games, and the other side is the one where it's single digit owned. So like, that's how I'm viewing that game of, if this game goes off, like I'll be able to get a higher owned value player and still play a lineup that's different.
Got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, we have Dallas ranking as the 7th highest propensity to put together like a top 1% stack. Not so much on the Denver side, but yeah, I mean, it does make sense. Like the ceiling, and kind of just the ceiling on the Dallas stack is well known, that you don't get like that much of a price discount on this Dallas side, but the ceiling is there. Does make good sense to me.
Do you have another plus, or do you have a minus? Whichever one.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going back with my tried and true Cleveland Browns going up against Cincinnati.
No, I have this as a minus.
Oh God. Yeah, I mean, just no Odell, no running game. Like I see them as being fairly condensed. They don't have the greatest implied total, but there's a real shortage of super strong totals. Bengals are projected to be favored. They're not a team that I typically like playing stacks against because they tend to go slow. They do tend to try to take the air out of the ball. But at the price that you're getting on some of these guys, and the just how condensed we're projecting that target tree to be in Cleveland, I'm not opposed to taking some small exposure to Brown stack.
I get your objective analysis. I just have this game as over owned. I think T. Higgins at 5,300. We have him at like over 20% ownership. Landry is probably going to be in the 15% range. Chubb and Mixon, I mean, they're lower than 10-ish% for running backs. Just seems like for projectable value, I could get better spots at slightly lower ownership. That I'm with you. If you split this ownership in half, I'd say it's a plus. So like from a price perspective, I like it. It's just that like Chase, we have Chase at 6.4% ownership at 7,600. And if you're playing lower stakes based on recency bias, he's going to be double digit owned, right? I mean, like he's going to be 10+% owned. Higgins is probably still be 20. I mean, Mixon had a good game last game. Instead of being 11, he may be 14 or 15. So just like I just see this game being too pot. I mean, I almost feel like I'd rather play Minnesota Baltimore then at that point if I'm going to play guys at this ownership. So like I'm with you as far as it's a close game. I'm concerned that the game may be too slow for a ceiling, but also we're not obviously. If we had 4 games that were 55 totals on this slate, we wouldn't be looking here. So like we don't have that. The scoring on this slate as a whole may be lower. So it may not be that big of a deal that maybe this game plays slow. Well, I mean, maybe the highest total game on the entire slate is only 47 points. So like doesn't matter if this goes 42, as long as you get the distribution correctly. I mean, these guys could still end up in the winning line.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's going to be popular at the skill, like at the skill position, but I mean, are you expecting Baker to generate significant ownership?
No, but Burrow will though. Burrow will be owned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So that,
but that's to me, that's the argument against the stack. The argument is that maybe I play Higgins plus Chubb, Landry plus Mixon, but don't play it as a quarterback, 2 pass catcher, 1 run back, those types of things. That you're making more of the case of like it's not has nothing to do with the quarterbacks. It has to do with like overall. Once I start bunching high owned players together, it's like, why do I want to do that? Like there's no cheaper, lower owned guy as part of that. They're all double digit owned. So if I'm going to do that, I might as well just like 1-1 and then move on and put it as a secondary correlation in another line.
Yeah, I guess so. My thing is just that like Baker will be low owned. So if you do have these high owned kind of pieces as one-offs or secondary correlations, one way to get different from these lineups that are gonna.
Yeah, but I don't think you get different at quarterback though. Like quarterback is such a flattened position. Do you think Baker Mayfield puts up 35 points? Like if he puts up 24 and at 1% owned, it's like I get 24 points out of so many other quarterbacks. I don't consider the quarterback ownership to be like, how do I get different because of that? It has to be some type of skill position player. And I just don't see where that Donovan Peoples-Jones, maybe. I mean, I guess like I'm looking like where's there in the stat, and there's nothing there. Tyler Boyd, maybe, right? But these guys don't project all that well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't really have too much more as far as pluses. Like I really am.
I got one more.
Okay, sure, go for it.
Okay, I got one more. I got 1 plus and 1 minus.
Yeah, I have some minuses. Happy to.
Okay. So go over Okay, you tell me why this is not a plus. And I tend to go back to this team over and over again because I don't think people realize how often they pass. The Raiders at the Giants. We take a look at this, and there's like it depends on status of people in this game. Currently 46.5 total. Raiders a 3-point road favorite, 24.75 implied total for the Raiders. Giants with a 21.75 implied total. The problem with this game is that like everyone's questionable in this game. I mean, like that essentially, like we have Waller questionable, Jacobs questionable, Tony questionable, Golladay questionable, right? But taking a look at the ownership versus this, like, are people going to play Waller at 6,200 if he's active? I think they're more likely to punt. With Ruggs now not on the team anymore and probably never play football ever again, it now condenses the targets even more. So, like, why can't I play Carr plus Waller plus Renfro, run it back with Tony or Golladay? Is Saquon apparently it should be fine. I mean, we got guys here. Bryan Edwards, 4,100. Or play Josh Jacobs and just go, I could play Daniel Jones plus Tony plus, Ingram plus Waller plus Jacobs. It just seems like there are a lot more combinations of this game. And the Raiders throw more than people think. And why can't I play Derek Carr at 5% ownership at 5,900 and pair all these guys together? And then in all those plus games that we were talking about, just, find the secondaries elsewhere. I mean, I don't know. I'm more likely to play this on the Raiders side, but what does your numbers show as far as this game reaching its top stack potential?
Yeah, so we actually have it as a pretty good game. Actually, just both sides kind of just below this top mix of Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo. We have, let's see, we have Giants and Raiders more or less neck and neck. We're working under the assumption that Waller will not play, so are particularly high on Renfro and Edwards. Obviously, if Waller is ruled in, I think things will shift around.
Right. And just to be clear, on my side, I have Waller in.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, if he's in, like, I think naturally stuff's gonna shift towards him and probably one of the other receivers, either Renfro or Edwards. So
I almost want him to be out, because if he's out, I could play Foster Moreau at 3K.
Yeah. I imagine if he's out or trending in that direction, like Moreau will get pretty good. It's hard to kind of project on how ownership will shake out if Waller gets ruled out or is trending towards out leading into the game. It would seem
Moreau would get insane amounts of ownership if we get that news by Saturday afternoon. The thing is that I almost don't care, because people don't like playing Derek Carr. People don't like playing Raiders stacks. So, like, how do I mitigate a high tight end, cheap tight end ownership? Well, by playing the stack with a run back of, Tony or Galladay or one of these guys. And it's kind of the same mentality I had with Amari Cooper of like he's the best wide receiver value. How do I play him in a different way? So, like, with Moreau in, obviously it makes the stack even cheaper, right? So, like, it makes it even more appealing. But I like it with Waller in. I mean, the offense is probably going to be even better with Waller in.
Yeah. And with no Shepard on the Giants side, like that passing or receiving core kind of becomes more condensed. So it makes sense. I mean, we have it kind of as a strong game, probably the preferred game outside of these kind of high tier passing stacks, which I don't know, at least like Buffalo is, looking potentially unbalanced. I think the Giants Raiders game has a good chance to be a pretty competitive game and could overachieve. So I like that as a plus.
How about more plus? You say you have some minuses.
Yeah, I do think the Miami Houston game in general is going to go a bit overowned, especially on the Miami side.
Especially now that Parker has been ruled. Is doubtful now.
Okay.
I believe I saw he's doubt. We currently still have him in our projections, but I think.
Yes, you're right. I did see that.
But the only reason I'm saying that is because with Parker out, that makes it more likely that people stack Tua with Waddle and Gesicki, because the targets get more condensed.
Yeah. I would like to be underweight on really both, like, this game as a whole. I think Houston will get not like big ownership, but certainly a little more than we have seen in recent weeks with Tyrod back. Would prefer to avoid that. And I like the Cincinnati side, but really, the Cleveland side rather, but really not interested in all at stacking the Cincinnati side. I think the ownership is just going to be a bit high there. So that's one I have under on.
What are your thoughts? I have a minus on the Chargers Eagles game.
Yeah.
Eckler is going to be one of the most high owned running backs. Goddard will get some ownership at tight end. People do like playing Jalen Hurts. I think there's a case to make a leverage choice by taking the leverage off of Eckler and playing the Herbert Allen Cook type of stack, and then running it back with a Devonta Smith. It's just that the way these two teams are playing, it's quite possible that this game is 70% running plays. Like that, I know that the total is up at 50, right? Chargers are 1.5 point road favorite, 25.5 implied total. Eagles 24.5 total. And this game could turn into a shootout. I mean, these have all the pieces to turn into a shootout if they choose to throw the ball. But at the ownership here, like, do I want to play Boston Scott? I mean, Rager's is probable. I mean, Hurts kind of spreads it doesn't throw the ball much, and then he spreads the ball around. I mean, it's just that I see so many landmines in this game. Like I see the upside, but I also see like, yeah, I'm going to take a shot on a 2% on Mike Williams at 7,100 and see him go 3 for 50 for nothing. And just like, this game ends up hitting its total, right? I could see this game going, 28-21. Eckler has a touchdown, and Jalen Guyton has a touchdown, and Boston Scott has one rushing touchdown, and Hurts has a rushing touchdown. Like, it's all spread out. And you're sitting there going, yeah, 49 points got scored in the game, and no one got there, right? And no one got, like, you may have some guys with 18 points and be like, okay, they're viable to be in the winning lineup, but outside of Eckler, like, who's going to be one of the most high-owned running backs, it's like where do I go in this game?
Yeah, or you get stuck with like Keenan Allen, like 6 catch, 80-yard, no touchdown game. I have minuses on both sides of this game as well. Particularly, I mean, Philadelphia, I think, is just going to get a ton of ownership, right? Like, people just, like you said, really like playing.
I don't think a ton. Only because we have Lamar. Only because we have Lamar in that price range where Hurts is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna. I mean, when we have Hurts at 6,700, and you could just spend 600 more to get Lamar Jackson, I think more people are going to do that. But still, we have in our ownership Hurts as the 4th highest owned quarterback, behind Lamar, Josh Allen, and Tua. There, so like the fact that Patrick Mahomes we have currently projected to be lower owned than Jordan Love.
Yeah. To me, that just. In kind of running some stuff like that kind of is appearing to be the spot to exploit, at least in our numbers. Be interesting to see if that moves around over the weekend with some of these injury news coming across, if that moves totals with no Waller. If Waller were to not play, man, it just feels like going like Kelsey, Mahomes, and then either going up to Tyreek or down like Hardman or something. Just feels like kind of a slam dunk. But that would be I think where I'm gonna look a lot this weekend. Which
is funny to say, because if it wasn't for Rodgers, being on the COVID list, like, we would be talking about that game the most because it would be the highest owned. Yeah, and right with Rodgers out, I think it just kind of is going to sour people on the Chiefs. And like you said, I think people are going to be interested to play Jordan Love, who, I think makes a ton of sense from a cash game standpoint, just given his price and, what we expect him to do with his legs. But I don't know. We have seen some of these, guys like Jordan Love, Fields, Lance, let down in kind of spots where we're optimistic, let down from a tournament standpoint. I think my preference would be to, go for Mahomes at lower ownership and kind of pass over fairly popular, obviously very cheap, but certainly fairly popular Jordan Love. Okay. And you'll be sending out some of these stats in your Substack. Yep, correct. Every week we'll have a Substack coming out. We'll send that out later today with the tables that I'm looking at kind of for this show, as well as some context and commentary around what some of the numbers mean, some ways to consider the metrics that are available, and how we might want to think about structuring lineups here on Friday. Understanding that, of course, things can move around as we get close to Sunday, but still think it's good to kind of take a early look and get a feel for how we want to approach building lineups moving into the weekend. And if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to give a thumbs up. Give me some thumbs. While you're here, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to know when we go live here on YouTube. And you can always catch this show if you're watching on YouTube as part of the RG Daily Fantasy Football podcast feed. So go search on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast for the Rotogrinders Daily Fantasy Football podcast. And feel free to rate and review on iTunes. So for Stewart Gibson of Advanced Sports Analytics, I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, and this has been another edition of the Advanced Sports Analytics Show here on Rotogrinders.com.